Hello everyone and welcome to my review of BattleBots 2020 episode 5, and that was of course last week's episode, so I haven't been as consistent with uploading recently. Just a lot of stuff has happened, including the channel reaching 1,000 subscribers, which is absolutely incredible. Thank you guys, but more on that later. Today we're going to talk about BattleBots 2020 episode 5, and of course this is one of the probably most notorious episodes of BattleBots I'd describe. It had some really good fights, some really destructive fights, but there was one fight in particular that left a bad taste in everybody's mouth, but I will get to that later. Looking at the fight card for episode 5, I have to admit it did not excite me very much at all. As with the rest of 2020 season, it's just been a lot of robots that haven't been very reliable or very destructive, and a lot of robots that easily beat other robots in the matches that we get. So it's some of the fights have been very meh, and that kind of continued today. We had a lot of matches in this fight card that could be very easily predicted or ended very quickly as well. So let's just start talking about our first fight, and that was of course Black Dragon versus Claw Viper. And Black Dragon of course is a very fearsome machine. It's from Brazil. It made the top 16 last year, caused a lot of upsets along the way. Traditionally they seem to run an egg beater spinner, but for this fight they used like a drum, a disc, and I'm not sure why, because they only use that configuration. It's the lightest of their weapons, and they use it when they have an opponent with a horizontal spinner, so they can attach the heavy front armor as well as the wedgelets. So I'm not sure why they used it against Claw Viper, which is a control bot with nothing destructive about it. It's designed to control its robots, lift them over, etc. It didn't have to do that in its last fight against Hydra, of course. It just showed how durable and how fast it was. It was a really speedy robot, and I was very surprised at that. So of course, to start this fight off, they just raced straight into the screws, completely missed Black Dragon. It seems like they attempted to lift Black Dragon, but then the weapons started having problems from there. It just started to become not very well controlled, and Black Dragon was able to capitalize on that. Black Dragon didn't really get a lot of big hits in, because like I said, the Drisk weapon doesn't seem to have as much bite as the egg beater that they used to use, but they did get a few big hits on there. But most of the time it was just grinding against the side armor of Claw Viper, which didn't really do a whole lot, or so I thought, because after an attack where Black Dragon rammed Claw Viper into the screws, Claw Viper actually had a lot of problems with mobility. Its drive seemed to just stop, and then afterwards it just started smoking, and nobody knows why. Black Dragon, they suddenly reintroduced their flamethrower. We all thought for sure that the flamethrower was left in the past, but they still have it, which is quite interesting. So Claw Viper started moving again after the count had started. It really wasn't as dramatic as it sounded, because Black Dragon just came in again and hit it and killed it. This fight was a bit boring, I have to admit. I did not really like this fight, because I kind of knew what was going to happen if Black Dragon used their egg Drisk, because they weren't going to get big hits in, but they were still going to end up winning the fight anyway. So it's not a very exciting way of winning the fight, by just grinding against your opponent. I don't know, that was my opinion anyway. As for Claw Viper, I kind of predicted it. Obviously it's a very small, very compact machine. It can tank a lot of hits typically, but I kind of knew that it was going to get overpowered at some point. Size doesn't really matter when it comes to combat robots, really, but Claw Viper is just so small and so compact that I feel like it can get easily bullied around and just generally overpowered by robots that are larger than it, and Black Dragon kind of showed that today for me. In our second fight, which was one of my favourite fights actually, we had Jackpot versus Ghost Raptor, and Jackpot struggled in their last fight with their spinner. It seemed like it had a decent amount of power, but the welds on the spinner broke, and it had some severe manoeuvrability issues. And Ghost Raptor, they kind of lost their fight as well due to reliability issues. Their spinner stopped working, and they caught fire and died against Shatter. So both of these robots came into the arena, and they desperately needed a win to show the selection committee what they can do. And Jackpot, oh my days. Remember 2 weeks ago when I said that the spinner on Jackpot didn't really have a lot of bite? I take it all back. It ripped Ghost Raptor open. It just ripped it open like a packet of crisps. Like, it came in, first of all, beheaded Ghost Raptor, ripped the whole spinner off, then came in again a few hits later, hit the back of Ghost Raptor. I don't know what that did, that looked quite bad. And then it just came and it split it open. Just completely split it open. And then, when it was split open, Jackpot Ghost Raptor was still moving around. It's like when a spider's only got like 3 legs and it's still moving around. And Jackpot came back in and smacked it again. And that was it for Ghost Raptor. It was completely and utterly dead. Jackpot, a lot of power in that spinner. They've worked all of the issues out. For a robot that was built in like just a couple of weeks, it is really, really good. And very, very impressive. They're at 2-0 now. They've definitely made it to the top 32. As for Ghost Raptor, this is its second loss in the season. It is very, very sad because it is a really capable robot and it's a really capable team. But I just feel like this edition of Ghost Raptor probably isn't at its best. Like, the CAD that we saw of it, it was very well armored and very sleek, whereas this one it has a lot of bits kind of hanging out where robots like Jackpot can capitalize, which is unfortunate because I really, really like the design of Ghost Raptor and I want to see it return and do well. Hopefully they can make it into the top 32 on the basis of their final fight card. Moving on, we have probably the most predictable match in the history of the show, and that is, of course, SubZero versus Grabber. SubZero has had issues with reliability in the past. In its very last fight, it actually had a faulty speed controller, and that cost it the whole match against Jackpot, which it was winning, but it lost as a result, and they were up against Grabber, who is concerning. But SubZero, as you might have guessed, they just came in and they flipped Grabber, and they flipped Grabber again, and they flipped it again, and they flipped it again. Grabber was flying all over the place like a pancake, and eventually it died. And, you know, I don't want to be disrespectful to the Grabber team, but it was never really going to be the most competitive robot, and SubZero certainly exposed that today. They threw it all through the air. I was really hoping that they were going to get it out of the arena, but they didn't. They just let it die against the screws, which was very sad. But I am just happy to see SubZero win. SubZero is one of the teams that I am actually supporting this year, with Copperhead and Kronos being the other two. And I'm very glad to see it get its first win and going 1-1. That's very cool. Grabber, I'm not sure what it's going to do, but it's going to do something. I hope. Now we reach the fight that was responsible for a civil war in the BattleBots community. Hydra entered the fight against Huge with a massive cow catcher stuck to the front of their robot, and that and a lot of other things caused controversy in the BattleBots community, and a lot of people have turned against the Hydra team, which is fair enough, that's your opinion, but a lot of people have also started inciting hate towards Team Archie, which I don't approve of. Like, that's just pathetic, stop it. But of course, Hydra, there's a lot of context that's important around this fight. Hydra informed BattleBots of their cowcatcher weapon ahead of time. They said, look, if we fight Huge, this is what's going to happen, it's going to be very boring, and BattleBots went, okay, fight Huge. And they fought, and that's what happened. So I don't know why anybody's surprised that it turned out that way. What other way was it going to turn out? Like, that's the second thing. What did you want Hydra to do? Flip Huge? You can't flip Huge. You cannot flip Huge. I don't care what you say about Mammoth. I don't care the Bronco almost rolled Huge over one time. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. You cannot flip Huge if you've got a narrow flipper like Hydra. It just can't be done. It just cannot be done. And so they had to find a way of controlling the fight without taking any damage, because otherwise they would just lose because of what they're supposed to do. I don't get it. And thirdly was, of course, the controversy that surrounded the exchange between the referee and Jake Hewitt. I think it's Jake Hewitt. I can't remember which Hewitt is. It's one of the Hewitt. So the Hewitt, he got Huge into the corner, and the referee asked him to reverse because you can only pin robots in the corner for a certain amount of time. But Huge wasn't actually trying to escape, it was just sitting there, and Hydra wasn't touching it, it was just sitting near it. And Huge was just sitting there on its backside, not trying to escape, and the referee asked him to reverse again, and Jake Hewitt said, look, I'm not touching him, why do I need to reverse? And they were officially warned by the referee, if they did that again, they could have been disqualified. And people did not like this. People did not like the fact that Hydra kind of talked back to the referee. Of course, it's not a great thing, it's not a very smart thing to do in any sport, and it's not a great example to set for people and young people watching the show, that to talk back to the referee. It's not a great thing to do, but it doesn't justify the amount of, I'm going to call it hate, it was hate, that the Hydra team were getting on the internet. Like, Robot Combat is very much heat of the moment thing. I'm sure he didn't mean anything like malicious by it. I don't think he was trying to be unsportsmanlike. It's just, what did you want Hydra to do apart from control Huge around? That was all it could do. Because if they went in without any way of trying to control Huge, they would have lost, because they can't really flip Huge over. So it was either that or they lose. And BattleBots kind of forced them into that situation by putting them against Huge in the fight card. Anyway, a rule change, the proposed rule change has been brought about regarding active weapons, and people are acting like it's a revelation and this is going to change BattleBots forever. It's not going to affect like 99% of fights. It's very rare that a robot is forced out of using its weapon. The majority of fights won't be affected by this. It's not a huge deal. As for the intentionally using your weapon part, that very heavily favours spinners in my opinion, because spinners, all they have to do is spin their weapon up, and that's intentionally using their weapon. As for the robots like hammers and flippers and stuff, it's more like waiting for your opponent to be in a good position and flip them over or hit them with the axe, and if you mistime it, then things can go absolutely horribly wrong. So many teams actually just spend the whole fight waiting for their opponent to be in the right position to be attacked, and they never get it, and it's going to go to the judge, and they're going to be like, oh, you never intentionally used your primary weapon, therefore you are... Like, how do you judge that? How do you judge the intention of that? I suppose you could relate it to the strategy that they put forward at it, because each team has to provide the strategy now before the fight, so that the judges, I suppose, can see whether they're sticking to their strategy and their plan and being aggressive or not. But this whole fight, the controversy surrounding it, could have been avoided if people knew the whole context of the fight. So just please, guys, if you disagree, then that's obviously fine, but just, I think everyone needs to be a little bit more respectful about it instead of just hurling insults at each other and stuff. It was very, very sad to see, and I don't want that to happen again. It's very sad. Moving on, we had Fusion and the second robot from Team Waiachi, which is a horizontal spinner and a vertical spinner. Extremely compact, very powerful, burst into flames in its last fight and just stopped moving. And we have the debut of Aegis, a completely new fighting robot. It's a flipper, and the unique thing about it is that it's armoured with Kevlar, which was either going to go very well or very badly, no in between. And this fight showed that it went incredibly badly. It was very, very destructive. Looks really cool on TV. Very unfortunate for the Aegis team, because the concept of Kevlar armor did not really work. Like Fusion, it wasn't just the side panels getting ripped off. Fusion seemed to actually tear through them, meaning that the Kevlar wasn't really able to withstand a spinning robot like they hoped it would. So a bit of an unfortunate day before Aegis. I hope that they can repair the damage and get the robot working again and prove me wrong, because of course this could just be an exception and Fusion could just be incredibly powerful or something. But a very, very unfortunate debut that it got absolutely mullered. And as for Fusion, it's 1-1 now. This doesn't prove its reliability, it just proves that it can tear through another robot without losing its weapon immediately. So they have yet to actually last a whole 3 minutes and actually prove its reliability to me. So I'm not totally convinced by Fusion yet. Moving on. And then we had the Big Deal versus Lockjaw. And I didn't like this fight. It was just a bit boring because Lockjaw's weapon, it had a few big hits and then it broke down, and then Big Deal's lifter got bent and we knew that that wasn't going to work either. So both robots were weaponless. Lockjaw just pushed Big Deal around a bit. Big Deal, it seems like it has the drive of Warhawk, and you know, Warhawk didn't need to have the most powerful drive because it had a pretty decent weapon, but Big Deal, it needs powerful drive because it's a lifter and it needs to control things, but the wheels are right at the back of the robot. It's really long and it seems like very slow when it's turning. And as for Lockjaw, it's gotten its second win now without its weapon, and we know it's fighting Jackpot next because they revealed that on the BattleBots website a while ago, but it's just not been very impressive this season. That's all I have to say about it, really, and it keeps getting stuck, its weapon keeps dying. I don't know. Lockjaw, I don't think, has a chance of winning this season, personally. Then we had the main event, the big fight that everyone's talking about. Not really, because Hydra vs Huge happened, but if that hadn't happened, and this would be the fight that everyone was talking about, Witch Doctor versus Kraken. And Witch Doctor, of course, they literally the highest returning robot from last season. Obviously, they made it to the finals, but they've lost their first fight against Hydra, and now they're going up against Kraken. And I thought that Kraken, because it lost to Black Dragon, it was just going to be, a simple victory for Witch Doctor. No. Witch Doctor's weapon, they've hardened it too much, so it's very brittle and the teeth keep falling off. Upon the first kind of impact with Kraken, its weapon broke and it lost all control throughout the match, allowing Kraken to just grab it, throw it all over the place with its superior drive power. Witch Doctor did cause damage with its broken weapon. It did rip the face off of Kraken and bent a tooth a bit, but Kraken ultimately grabbed Witch Doctor, controlled it everywhere, absolutely dominated the fight, and Witch Doctor could do absolutely nothing about it. All I will say is it's a big improvement for Witch Doctor that its drive didn't burn out, and its weapon kept on moving. So it's just the fact that its weapon lost a tooth and they were trying to outdrive Kraken while just jumping around everywhere because the weapon was unstable, and it just didn't work out for them, and they did actually end up losing the fight. They couldn't get any big hits on Kraken and knock it over and take the wheels off, and Kraken was just really, really well driven, really well controlled, as they always have been, and they managed to completely defeat the number 2 seed, which is incredible, and I'm really, really happy for them that they got a win after that controversial decision against Black Dragon last time. So great stuff from Kraken. Witch Doctor is 0-2 now, which no one expected. I suppose that it's been 2 very close losses. Like, Hydra could have gone either way. Against Kraken, they lost fair and square, but it was quite close. Again, they put up a good fight despite having a broken weapon. I think that they're fighting Slammo, because I saw it in the trailer a long time ago that Witch Doctor vs Slammo was happening at some point. So I think that Slammo is the next fight card, but I'm not 100% sure. So if they do fight Slammo, that will be interesting, and they'll need to win that fight in order to get to the top 32. They're not going to get through by being 0-3. So a bit unfortunate that Witch Doctor has had this a bit of a sad start to the season, but a great opportunity for Kraken. And that has been my review of the episode. Sorry if I sounded very, very unenthusiastic about some of the fights there. And all I will say is that some of them were a bit boring, and I don't have any trouble admitting that. As for the 1,000 subscribers, thank you so much. I did not see that coming. Like, we had 600 subscribers a few weeks ago, and then I uploaded the kind of mini documentary about robot combat, and the people have just been coming in their hundreds, and it's... Thank you. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here and for subscribing to the channel. I really hope that you enjoyed this review, despite me being very unenthusiastic in some of the fights, but thank you very much anyway, and I will see you next week, hopefully. Goodbye.